Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Part 1 session. If you have any questions as we're going through this session, you can type them in the program that's connecting us, and we'll answer as best as we can while we're doing the session. But if you don't receive an answer today, then you'll receive an answer through email later on after the session is over. If you have any questions after the session is completed for today, you can also send them to support@clienttrack.ca for any questions in the future. So what we're going to be looking at here is the business client section, the tasks, and personal clients. We do them in this order because there are some specific things you're going to want to start with in certain sections that will make other parts of the program usable. So let's just go through some basic things here. The screen we're seeing is the business client section, and it's going to highlight this sort of handshake icon here on the left-hand side, and we're going to be by default in this tab at the top, just to the right of that handshake icon, called Client Info. So when we're seeing this screen, we're going to see the general information for the client we're currently viewing. We're also going to be seeing the default contact here for this company in the bottom right. Now, when we get into looking at adding more than one contact for a company, you'll notice in the blue bar here just above the name, there's a picture of two little people. And when you click it, it drops down the rest of the usernames that you have here for this company. So you can put as many contacts as you want on here, and then you can make a quick change to see a different name and information. But it won't change who the default contact actually is. So if you see we move to the next client, and then just come back here really quick, you'll see it reverts back to the original client name here, or contact name. Now, just above this, we also have some check boxes, which you can use to say what services you may or may not provide for this particular client. So how these work is the first time you click one, you'll get a black check mark. The second time you click it, we'll turn it gray, and a third will clear it out. Now, those colors don't have any real default meaning. They can be whatever you want them to be. How many offices seem to use them is the black check mark will be a service they currently do for the client, and then a gray will be something that they would like to provide for the client in the future, and blank meaning that it doesn't apply to this particular client. So once again, you can decide how you want to utilize those, but that seems to be the most preferred usage. Now, you'll also notice just below them there's a Customize List button, and that basically allows you to change the names of these checkboxes. These items, when you use them, they don't schedule anything in the program. They're just strictly information. And if you change any of these names, a question that comes up quite often is, are any of the tab names at the top that have similar names also going to be modified? The answer is no. Those tabs are not customizable in name because there are very specific things within them. So if you're going to change one of these checkboxes, you may want to change one for a section that you're not already using for tasks in the program. And that's just a suggestion. That's not necessarily how you have to operate things. All right, now in terms of finding a client, the absolute best search method is to use the binoculars here on the left-hand side. And when you click this, you're actually going to see two different search options. So the top one assumes you know the name of the client that you're looking for. And as you try to type out the name, it actually tries to fill out the rest of the name for you so that you don't end up having to type out the whole thing every time. But there are going to be some times where you don't necessarily know the name of the client because it's a numbered company and you know them by Bob's Pizza Shop. So what you can do is you can type in the lower search field here, and you can type whatever you actually have from the main details of their file. So their phone number, their fax number, their email address, their address, even some of the notes that you can leave on their file here for the main pieces of information, you can search by that. So when I run a search for 1234 here, it scans all the business clients in this section of the program and gives me anything it can find that matches with what I've typed in. So in this case, we have a few companies, same numbers in their digits, but we're just going to double click to go to the correct one. So let's just go to the charitable organization. So you see a quick double click goes right to the file, but then I can go back to the beauty salon any time because that was the first one in the list. So I just clicked the very top button here on the right with the blue arrow and the line. That goes back to the very first client in your list. Now, once you're on this client's file, if you want to make any changes to their information, you can click the edit pencil here on the left-hand side in the blue area. And that's going to come up with a window that has 4 different tabs that you can utilize to change information. So the first tab is pretty straightforward. It's their name, their phone number, their address, and all their standard details. There's nothing really fancy here. As well as on a per client basis, you can list from the usernames you've added to the program for the people who are going to use ClientTrack in your office, who the supervising partners or managing accountants might be. Now, this doesn't assign this person to any tasks we're going to schedule afterwards, but it does allow me to run reports in other sections of the program based on this detail. So it's not something you have to use. It's something that you can use if you want to, but you can completely skip that, of course. The Personnel tab are the contacts that we have listed on the company's details. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Now, one of the things you're going to find is after you do an initial import of all your client information, you'll do an import of your business clients, you'll do one for your personal clients as a separate import for the two different parts of the program. And a lot of times those personal clients are actually the contact names for your companies that you brought into the system. So what you're actually going to want to do is link them to their existing company. And we actually don't do that from here. We're going to go to the left-hand side and we're going to click on the address book, which is accessible from the left-hand side of either business or personal clients. And that's going to bring up a window here. You'll see it opens up behind Client Track. We're just going to bring that to the front. And we're going to open up our personal client folder. And then what you're going to want to do is locate the personal client name you wish to copy to a company. Right-click that name. And then choose the bottom option, Copy this contact to company. And finally then choose which company this name belongs to. And once you make that connection and click OK, that's going to take a copy of that person's detail and place them underneath that company you've chosen. What's also nice about this is that that contact name is the same information in both locations, so that in future, if I go to either side of the program and I make a note or a change to their phone number or their address, that'll be updated in both the contact detail here and the personal client file here because it's the same file. This way you don't have to remember to go to multiple sections in the program to make those changes because it's already happened. Now, if the contact you're adding to a company is not an existing personal client, then when you're in the Personnel tab on the Business Clients file, just simply type the name here. So you want to do first, middle if you have it, and then last, or just first and last. If you type in 3 names here and then you click the Add button above to create the contact, it'll separate the names as first, then middle, then last. If you type in just 2 names, it'll just separate them as first and last by default. So whenever you go to click Add, I'm going to edit Sarah's here to show you what it looks like. You're going to get this window, and like I said, it'll separate those names for you. And then Sarah here is an existing contact on this company at this point. If you don't need her as a personal client in the system, then the only thing aside from her name that would really matter to you now would be the information that appears in the Business Info tab, because this is actually what's going to show up in the contact window on the right-hand side. And you can, of course, put whatever you want in here. You can also fill out Sarah's personal information, spouse details, family member information, and any other notes you may want to leave in her file. And the reason why is because Sarah may not yet be a personal tax client of mine at the moment, but she may be one in future. And so where her name appears, I can either do this now or any time in future. I can click under personal tax status, the checkbox here. So I can fill that out and click OK. And what that's going to do is that's going to take a copy of Sarah and then put her into the personal client section of the program. So again, maintaining that same kind of link we talked about going the opposite way. Now finally, the default contact that you have listed for the company is whoever has the green check mark listed beside their name here. And you can simply just click beside another name to update that. And once you change it and click OK, that's going to update it on the contact window for you. The next tab over is 6 fields of information that you can utilize for anything that may be relevant to the titles you're seeing here. You can't change these titles, but if you do utilize the space, you'll notice that it does actually appear on the client's file. So you can see that just below the address there. And there is actually a character limit of around 200 characters in these. So you want to make sure that you kind of keep it to the point when you're putting details in here. Finally, in the last tab, there's an alternate address information. And then there are actually customizable fields that you can utilize to display things we didn't have a default spot for. So what you may want to do is start by figuring out what you want to call the field. And then when you figure that out, you can click Define Custom Fields here below it and change the field name. And that'll change it across the board for all business clients. Personals won't be affected by that. They actually have their own separate set of 5 of these as well. Now what I've done is I've changed the first one to be called bin number, and I'm simply stating that I have a filing cabinet system in my office. There are 5 physical cabinets with drawers A through Z and folders 1 through 50. So that's where I keep hard copy information for those clients, and then instead of keeping that in a Rolodex or an Excel spreadsheet that might get pretty long and hard to find things in after a while, this may be more efficient because, as you noticed, it appears on the client's file here. So when you run a search for the client name, you get to it right away, you see the information you're looking for. It may be a much more efficient method of finding details like this. So you can utilize those again, of course, for whatever you guys want in your office. You may just want to get together as a team and discuss that. The last thing is there is a note section in here that, as we saw earlier, does appear on the client's file. So I'm sure you noticed that. You can put as much information as you want in here. However, because you see it right away, we suggest putting in information in here that you should be aware of when you look at this particular client's file. So like my example says here, when you're speaking to the owner of this location, try not to mention this detail as they get upset about it. And that's likely something I want to avoid. So that's the kind of stuff you may want to put into there, is things that you should be aware of every time you see the file, so that you either follow a certain step of order of things, or that you know to say something or not say something, depending on the scenario and the client that you're working with. Now, with that in mind, you may want to know, okay, well, where do I put other kinds of notes that I have for my client's files? Now, there are several different note locations, but the most usable and most important one can actually be done from anywhere in the program. But on a client's file, you can do it from a tab here at the top called More Info. See, there's actually two sections here. So there's Missing Info, which is the upper half, and then Client Communications, the lower half. So you can actually add to these and run reports in them from anywhere in the program by utilizing these icons in the bottom right. So if you look in the bottom right, you'll see there's a blue circle with a question mark in it, and then a little one with a notepad, and then there's a phone icon, and also then a phone icon with a notepad. So the blue circles, they actually deal with the upper half, and the phone icons deal with the lower half. The big blue circle allows me to add an item to the upper section from anywhere. The big phone icon allows me to add to the bottom section. The ones with the notepads allow me to run reports and search, and also see which ones have been assigned to me immediately, because the default view when you open that up is to actually show you the items from here that have been assigned to you as the user that you need to take care of. And I'll explain that further in just a moment. So if we want to add to the upper section and we're on the client's file, we can click the green button. You'll see that it comes up with a window and it knows which client it's for because we're on the file. However, if I click the blue circle, even while we're on the client's file, because you can do it from anywhere in the program, it can't assume that you're actually looking at a client, so you have to tell it which client it's for. That's the only difference. Now, the upper half is designed to log strictly things like missing information you need to locate and questions which require an answer. So what you're going to do is choose your type, give a quick word or so for the subject, assign it to either yourself or somebody else, for whoever needs to take care of the item, and then put in your details in here. Same thing happens with the communications, except that they can be for whatever you want. So when you first start using the program, you'll notice that there are actually no communication types in this menu to choose from by default. So you're going to want to add those in there. Now, only one of you in the office has to do this. Usually the admin who's setting it up will do it. What you're going to do is click the little bubble right beside the dropdown. And then from this window that comes up, you can add as many types as you want. So some good examples are like the ones you're seeing on my screen. Agreement, approval, client request, email, phone call, fax, text, message, walk-in, client agreements. And what's good about these is that you can put as many as you want. Now, in terms of email, it's not that you can drag and drop an email from your email software into ClientTrack, but more that you would create a communication, go to your email, copy the text, and then paste it into here. So you wouldn't want to do it for every single email you ever get from a client. You just want to do it for the ones that are maybe highly important that you want to have on their file in ClientTrack here as searchable history. Now let's try out an example of these, because not only can you add these, you can actually pass them back and forth to each other as much as you like. So let's say I get a call for somebody in my office. Let's say the call is for Tim. So in my subject, I'll put one or two words here that just briefly summarizes what the item is about. Okay, and then we're going to assign the item to Tim. Now, like I said, you can assign stuff to yourself, because maybe it's the end of your day. You want the program to remind you first thing when you log in tomorrow about a phone call or whatever it is. So what's going to happen is when you actually have items assigned to you from here, you're going to get that window that I showed you earlier that allows you to run searches on these. It'll pop up right away and show you immediately all items that have been assigned to you as a user that are not resolved. So you'll be aware of these every time you log into the system. So let's give this to Tim. And then we're going to click the date stamp here in the communication area, which records the exact moment in which I'm doing this, so that as multiple people add to this, we see all the different users and days and times in which they added more detail in case it got passed around a few times. So I'll list the details of the call here. Now this is all I got to do at this point. So I'm going to click OK to save this, and it's going to ask me, do I want to let Tim be notified by pop-up? So if he's in the program and I want to let him know right away he's been given a new item, then I can say yes. And what's going to happen is in the bottom right above where your time appears in Windows, you're going to see a little pop-up come up and say, you've got a new communication for this client. It won't say much more than that. And then you can put a snooze on it in case you want the pop-up to come back up later, or you can close the pop-up and then just simply click the phone icon with the notepad on it, and that, again, will immediately show you your items. And you can do that from anywhere in the program. So let's say Tim logs into the program and he sees that window come up. So we're just going to run a search here for his name by clicking the magnifying glass and telling the search to give me his results. So there's the phone call we gave to him. Now, Tim doesn't necessarily need to be on the correct client's file, but you'll notice in the background he's probably not. In this case, we're looking at the home builder. If you want to go to the right file immediately, in the client name column, if you just single click that name, you'll notice in the background, as soon as I click that, changes to the right file. So he's got their address and phone number and so on. But you'll also notice if we just full screen this here, the actual details and phone number is on the item. And then he can click View Info from anywhere in the program to actually open this up and then add to his details. So let's say he gets on the call now with the client. So he moves my stuff down, pops in his own date stamp. That would say his name because he'd be logged in as himself. And he'll put whatever updates he's got for the call here. So now, if the call's dealt with, nobody else needs to know about anything at this point, then Tim can just simply click the Resolve checkbox to finalize the item, and that's now dealt with. It's not going to delete it from the system. It's going to be on the client's file permanently. It's just not going to be on our list of things to take care of anymore. But let's say he wants to give it back to Adam to let him know what's gone on. So he's just going to update the intended recipient and click OK. And then it would ask, if we were logged in as Tim, do you want to let Adam know by pop-up? So he can let Adam know right away the item's been given back to him. So if we refresh his list, we'll see it's gone. But if we close the window and reopen it, it automatically searches for my items again. So you can actually see the item has appeared on my list. And I can now take a look at it. And then when I feel it's done, I can resolve it. Or if I need to give it to somebody else, then we can keep passing it back and forth until it's dealt with. Then when we resolve it, it finalizes the item. So if we refresh one more time, you can see I'm back down to 4 items is gone from my list. So that's all it takes to add those items into the system. Now, let's say you want to run a search on these. So it could be good as a defensive tool if you're logging agreements in here or interactions that you've had with the clients, and then you need to look these up in future. So let's say a client agrees with you on a small discount on their next invoice because there was a minor discrepancy. You want to keep your client happy, but you want to get them off the phone with you and just get back to your day. So you tell them there's going to be a 4% discount on the next invoice. So they agree, you log that on the system, you resolve it, it's done. The client gets the invoice from you, and a couple weeks later they call back saying, I have a discount on here, and I know we agreed to that, but I thought that it was going to be an 8% discount, not the 4 like it says here. So maybe the client's trying to get more out of you. So what you can do is you can say, okay, well, hold on a sec. Instead of arguing with the client or searching through piles of paperwork to find this agreement, you're just going to click the magnifying glass and run a search. Now, this is how all your major reporting is going to be done in the program. You're going to be in some sort of a list view, whether that's for tasks or these items or other parts of the software. There's always going to be a magnifying glass in the top left, and then it's going to allow you to specify what you want to see. Now, in a historical report, I don't really care who it's intended to because it could have been passed around to many different users in the office. So what I care about is looking for the client in question, the type, in this case, agreement, and then I'm actually going to remove the resolve status, so I search for both. And this way I don't just accidentally miss something in case I forgot to resolve the item. On the Dates tab, I can then specify a specific day, an on or before, on or after, or a certain date range. But if you're not sure, you can just say, you know what, just give me all the dates here and run the report. So instantly, basically, you're going to have the details. So you can immediately turn around and tell the client, well, okay, this is what we said on your file. This is when we logged it. This is who spoke with you. These are the details that we agreed to. And usually because you find that instantly, the client's going to be pretty good with that. But if they need a little further proof from you, let's say they want to see the report from the system, all reports that you make in the program can be recreated in Excel by clicking Export to Excel at the top. Once you pop it into Excel, you can then do what you want to do with that file. You can save it and then give it to the client by attaching it to an email. You may want to lock it so they can't tamper with it, but do what you got to do and send it off away to your client. So it can be a pretty good defensive tool, and you want to get your users in the habit of putting those items in, especially when it comes to missing info from your clients, because that will come into play with an example we'll look at a bit later. So that's all your sort of basic preliminary stuff. Now, the biggest thing about the program is the ability to actually schedule your deadlines, which we call tasks in the program. So that's what you're going to be going to these tabs here, like HST and Payroll Source and so on, and doing. Now, there is nothing scheduled by default, and that's because we can't assume to know the frequency in which you remit things for you and your clients. So you're going to have to go to each client's file and tell it what are the deadlines and how often you do these things. Fortunately, though, it's a one-time setup. You only have to schedule these one time per client, and the program will actually automatically reschedule everything for every following season for you without you having to do a thing. So what's going to happen is there's actually going to be a thing come up called the New Year Wizard as of January 1st. Now, you can actually run this in advance from the Tools menu. It's called the New Year Wizard as well from there. Some people like to run it at about the end of November because they have client year ends that are coming up as of December, and they want to be aware of those so they can send out notification and so on. So anything that's not finished from 2018 will still be showing for you to take care of, but all your 2019 deadlines will also be scheduled if you run it in advance. Otherwise, if you run it as of January 1st, once again, if there's nothing or if there's something that's not finished from 2018, your program's still going to be showing you that it's outstanding. It'll archive all the completed items from last year and then reschedule everything for 2019. So first of all, let's give you an understanding about the way the program works with our deadlines. The program works on the philosophy of a calendar year basis. So what happens is when you go ahead and click an option here to schedule your items, it's going to schedule the whole year's worth of deadlines. And you can see there's a period end date in the system. Now, this is a default generalized period end as to what it would normally be in the majority of cases. And that's normally going to be accurate in about 98% of your clients. But there may be a couple where that doesn't match. And there's no real settings here to change this. And that's because it's not necessarily the focus of the program. The focus is, in fact, the due date. And the idea behind that is because we work on a calendar year basis, regardless of the period in which an item is from, those due dates are still those due dates. And that's the most important thing. And you don't want to miss that because missing it can incur a penalty. Now, if a due date is incorrect, you can certainly click and change that due date to what it should be. And the program will remember that change for that client going forward. It won't affect any other clients, just the ones you've changed it on. Now, one other thing to understand is every time you schedule a task in the system, every task in the program gets placed onto a task calendar. And there is one calendar for every user you add to the system, including one for the work that has not yet been assigned to anyone. So before you actually go and schedule your deadlines in the system, one thing you may want to consider doing is go to the Tools menu and go into it's about 3/4 of the way down here. It's called Edit Tasks Options Wizard. And then the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see a list of all of the tasks in the program, including any customizable ones that you've made yourself or any bookkeeping ones you've made yourself. Because bookkeeping and custom you'll have to set up, and we'll show you those in a few minutes. So you'll want to also create, any types of templates that you have for yourself as well, and then go ahead and do these settings. Now, the first and most important thing here is we have an estimated time. Now, this is global per task type, meaning it applies to all clients that you're going to be able to give this to across the board. So what this does is it tells the program, okay, whenever you give this kind of task to a client in the system, and we put it onto your calendar, how much time of the day should it block aside by default? Because that's roughly how long it takes you to get that done. The defaults are always an hour in the system, but you can make them whatever you want, except for 00, it has to have at least a minute. And then the program will now keep that in mind. As soon as you start putting your deadlines in, it'll start putting those on your schedules with the appropriate estimated times. And you can do that, like I said, for every type of task in the system. The next thing is on the next tab over here called Internal Date Options. You can set your own in-house due date period. This won't affect where it shows up on your calendar. It won't affect the deadline. It's just going to be simply as part of your reporting in the task list. It's not really a necessarily important thing in the program unless you focus heavily on your own in-house due date. So again, you can either leave that alone or change it, play with it. But another thing that's very important is the actual calendar date here. So what this does is it tells the program how many days prior to the actual deadline do you want these types of items to show up in your system as sort of a safety net for you and your users. The defaults are 10 days, and you can obviously change that to whatever you want, including even changing it to 0 days and just having them show up in your schedule the day they're due. So that would be, again, a call that your office would make. once you've had a chance to modify those settings, then you can go ahead and start scheduling your deadlines. And you'll see again, with one click from the item on the left here, it schedules the whole season's worth of deadlines, but now those settings are going to take effect. Now, we can't assume that you've completed anything with a client, even though you might be setting something up halfway through the year. So you're going to want to close off whatever you've already completed so far for the tasks that you're scheduling, because if you're scheduling them in the middle of summer, then obviously half of the year has gone by, so you've probably completed quite a few things. Whereas if you're scheduling this at the beginning of the year, then you probably won't be closing anything because you're just setting it up for the first time and everything is still sort of to follow. So whatever you've completed, just go ahead and close those off. And that tells the program, okay, I won't bother you for these again until we reschedule them next year. Now you'll also notice there is a little notepad here in the top right. You can leave notes that specifically pertain to this tab. And it's specifically for this client. So you'll see that if I go to the next client, the tab, this same tab, the note here in the top right, looks like it's a blank piece of paper, versus the previous client, it actually has a different icon to let you know there is stuff in there. You may just want to put generalized information for when you do work like this. If you're ever in here, this is the kind of stuff you might need. But this is the only place you can see that, so you may want to use it very sparingly. All right, so as we look at the rest of the tabs here, we can see there is a lot of items that you can use to schedule the deadlines here on the left-hand side. So you just go ahead and click them and it schedules them in. If it's a checkbox and you clicked one by accident, you can just deselect it and can confirm you want the item gone. If it's like HST, you can go no HST on the left and again confirm you want the items gone. You'll notice there is two payroll tabs. So there's sort of your main payroll, and you can say for biweekly which week it actually begins. You'll also notice for like quarterly HST as well, you can say what month of the year it begins, because sometimes that's based on the client's year end, and you can set those up. Then there's your payroll source, which used to be called payroll remittance in the program, and you could set a secondary payroll if there's a necessity for that. You've also got the year-end and corp tax tabs. Now there is a bit of an explanation for these. Now let me just take a sec to clear out what's here from my last example. All right, so I'm just clearing those out a little bit of a different way. So if your client's year-end falls in any month other than December, then just go ahead and click whatever month it is, the day and month, and that's all you really need to care about. Because when you put this task in by clicking Create Year-End Task, it's going to put it in for the year we're currently in, which in the top right is 2018. Now, this is not where things are necessarily due for the client, but this allows you to know, like run a report based on tasks, what year-ends are up and coming, and then also get the program to remind you to send out a notification to the client. We'll show you how to set those up pretty shortly. In the corp tax, however, this is where you schedule the dates that actually precede it where things are due. So these top two checkboxes on the left-hand side will come in by default as the 3 and 6 months past that year-end deadline. So this is where things are actually needing to be completed by for the client in most cases. If it's a 2-month period, of course, you can just click and change that to what it should be. And again, the program will remember that change, of course. But the bigger explanation about this is that if you're scheduling a December 31st year-end for the client, what you're actually going to want to do is schedule the last one you worked on. So you'll want to move to 2017 by going to the top right-hand corner and clicking the pencil where it says 2018, and then make a temporary change to 2017. And now go ahead and select December 31st and create that task. And you'll see it puts it in for 2017. Then we go to Corp Tax and schedule these guys so they come in as the appropriate 2018 deadlines that follow that. And then this is now the reason why some people would move the program forward at the end of November, because they have some tasks like this where they want the 2018s to be set up before the year's over so they can go ahead and send word to the client and so on. Whenever you're done working with a previous year, quickly just move back to 2018 so you don't accidentally schedule something in another tab for the incorrect year. Now, concerning the bookkeeping and custom tabs, you're going to need to create your own services. Now, bookkeeping is separate per office. Like, it's very different from an office to another, so we couldn't really put anything in as a default like the rest of the tabs. So we just gave you the ability to put your own in here. And what you're going to do is click on Add New Bookkeeping Service, the green button in the top left-hand corner. And this is going to be your service creator. So what you want to do is you want to give it a name that is appropriate for the work you'll be providing. And you can, of course, abbreviate things or not. It's up to you. If you want the items numbered from the first one to the last one, depending on how many there are, you can click the checkbox below and it will order them from start to finish. And then next, you're going to tell it the frequency in which it occurs. So you'll notice the due dates here below. The settings actually change depending on what frequency I'm selecting here. And in most cases, you'll want to make sure that you do select the correct things here. But in monthly's case, this is probably the only one you really don't need to change more than just the day of month it's due, because you want it once every month. You want it beginning in January so it does the whole year's worth of deadlines there. So you just want to make sure you select what day of month should it be finished by. And if you choose the 31st, it'll use the last day of whatever each month happens to be. The next drop-down right below that, don't worry about it, it's irrelevant. And right now we're creating a template, so I would suggest you leave it as unassigned, and then just assign the items to your users later on as the deadlines come up. And then, of course, the estimated time you don't have to change from here. You can change it from the tools menu in the settings we looked at earlier. So you can, of course, change it here if you want, or modify it later on once you've saved the template. Now, for both bookkeeping and custom, you can actually set your own period end dates for these guys. So you can just use the default rule, which in a month case is the previous month, or in a weekly case, it would be the week prior. So those are generally the defaults, but you can, of course, use your own custom rule and set your own settings there. So whatever you pick, once you're done selecting those things, you want to then click the green button here, Add Tasks, and that's going to populate the list on the right-hand side. What you want to do is take a look at your dates, make sure everything is what you want it to be, and then give this a template to save name. Now, I would suggest saving it as the same name as the task itself. So we're just going to paste the same name in there and then click on Save, and that's going to give you a confirmation that that's been done. Now, in my case, I've already got this one created, so it's just telling me I can't save another of the exact same name. Once you've created, though, from any client's file, you can now click Cancel, and it's going to appear as part of the service list that you can now schedule. You can go to any client's file now and give this to the clients that need them. So what you're going to do is highlight it, go to the bottom of the list and click Assign Selected Service to this client. And then also for bookkeeping and custom services, the last thing will appear before it schedules it. It'll ask you, do you want to use the default settings you chose, or do you want to change something for this particular client? So even though I gave the template, in this case, the 22nd, let's say for this client it's actually the 15th of the month that we want to do it, but everything else is the same. So that allows me to make changes on the fly with them so that it's not written in stone and I don't have to create loads of different templates of the same type of thing just to have a different date. Now with your custom, it works exactly the same way with two minor differences. There is a single task creator in the top left, which is kind of like a one-time task that will never repeat again, but you'll notice that it does tell the program to reoccur. So you just want to make sure you take that out if you don't want it to reoccur. And you don't have to save it, but of course you can. And then the reoccurring option below that is the same creator we saw in bookkeeping. The only difference is I can tell whatever I create in here to become a part of any other existing tab of the program once we schedule it to the client. So that may not make sense at first, but let's say you look through the tabs there and you notice that there is nothing concerning any T3 items. In fact, the only extra thing you're going to find from the payroll source where you've got T4s and 5s is there is also a T5018 under Other, but there's nothing in the software for T3 slips or T3 items in general. So maybe I want a T3 slip scheduled and I want it to show up alongside payroll source, alongside the other T4s and 5s. So I go ahead and create the recurring item. I call it T3 slip, and I set it as yearly because it's just once a year. And I tell it when it's due. And that last little checkbox will tell the program, yes, I want it to automatically reoccur. So that's a yes by default. So we create the scheme, we type the name, and we save it, and that's going to be saved under the custom section. But when we actually assign it to the client, you'll notice it's going to tell me it's been added to the tab that we've chosen. And if we now look at payroll source, you can see that the T3 slip actually appears in this section. So the program actually considers it to be a payroll source item. You may find in some cases it's actually called payroll remittance. There was an old name for it, and it's not been changed in some locations. But payroll source and payroll remittance are the same thing. So when I run a report in the task list and I say, show me the payroll items, it'll come up alongside the T4s and 5s. However, I can still do just a report for just the T3 slips by themselves from the task list as well. All right, so that's all it takes to get your scheduling done. Now, one last thing we're going to talk about here just before we move on to that task portion. you'll notice that there is a notify checkbox here on the right of your items, and it's blank when you first begin setting things up. Now, that's just simply to tell you that you haven't activated the notification system for this client. It is done on a per client basis from the main client info tab. On the right-hand side, there's a button here called Client Options. And then there's a tab in here called Auto Notifications, and you're going to say which types you want to set up. Now, it's fine if you hit Select All. The program is not going to make you send out a notification for a task that isn't scheduled on their file. But here's why you got to do it individual, because when you click OK, it's going to ask you how does this client prefer to be notified. You're going to choose one of these following options. Now, just so you know, because I've had this question quite often, if you choose the phone call option, the program is not going to call the client for you. It will, however, tell you who to call based on the default contact and their phone number, and also what the item is about, just so that you're aware of it. When you click on Finish, the program is going to give you a little loading bar to let you know it's taking care of that for you. And now you're going to see that the Notify checkboxes are filled out for the ones that weren't already listed as being closed. And when that's set up, what's going to happen now is the first thing that all users will see before anything else when they log in is the notification wizard, which I'm just going to open manually at the top of the program here, called the Auto Notification Wizard. Now let's full screen this. So this will be the first thing you'll see. It's designed to show you all notifications that must be sent out by all users to all clients as a default setting. The reason is because you guys are working as a team. And so if one of you is sick or for a week or on vacation, then other people in the office can know, okay, well, maybe I can send those out for that person while they're gone and cover the tracks for them. But if you just want to see your own, you can go to the top and click on All Unsent Assigned to You, and that will show you just the ones you're responsible for. When you do click to send, if you've chosen email, we don't actually send from ClientTrack. ClientTrack doesn't have the ability to send and receive emails. It uses your real email program on your computer. So when we click send, the only thing we record is the date you chose to do this. In this window, you can use the search to run reports based on the dates that you did send items. But you can see it's going to open up an email in my real program here. It's going to fill out the client's email address, providing I have it on file, a subject for the item here, and then a body of the item, which is based on a template you can modify before you actually send these out. But the program gets you to confirm this as well, because maybe you want to attach a file. Maybe you want to write in something personally to the client here before you send it. There is also some email legal reasons that have changed in Canada, which is why we have to force you to sort of confirm you want to send this out. So if you've got 5 or 6 of them, you'll have to, of course, click send now, confirm you want to send it by, once again, clicking in here, and then it's off and away to the client. Now, if you are using Outlook, then on a per computer basis, you'll want to go to the Tools menu and go to Preferences, and then go into the Email tab and click the one button you see in here and change it to the Outlook automation. If you're using anything else, just keep it as the default email program. You can also use Gmail, but the stipulation is you need to make sure that you have Google Chrome installed as your web browser, which is what I have right here. You also then need to log into Gmail, and on your URL tab, which is this bar here. So on your URL bar, on the right-hand side, there's going to be an icon that looks like 2 diamonds connected to each other. And when you click it, there's going to be the option to say deny or approve. You're going to want to click approve. It may say allow. After that's done, you then want to make sure you go to your control panel, or default programs if you see it here. But if you can't see that, it'll be in your control panel. And then again, you want to go to default programs, and you want to set your default programs, and you want to tell your Windows operating system that Google Chrome is your default email item by setting it as the default program. If you happen to have Microsoft Outlook installed on your system and you want to use Google Chrome as your Gmail email program, you probably want to uninstall Outlook as well. Now, that has worked in 99.9% of the offices we've done it in. There was one office that, for whatever reason, we did all those settings. It just did not want to work. And then Windows did an upgrade a few months later, and then suddenly it was working for the client. So we can't exactly guarantee that it will work for you, but it should work if you follow those instructions. Okay, now, in terms of modifying the template for what it says on your notifications, we're just going to go back to the Tools menu, and then go to the Tasks Options Wizard, which we looked at earlier. And then we're going to go into Client Date Options. So this is the notification period in which you wish to have the program tell you to send out a notification to your client. The default is 15 business days, but you can change that to whatever you want. So 15 business days is more like 18 days in reality because of the weekends that would be involved in there. And now if you want to change the actual wording for what it says on the template itself, then what you can do is you can click the green button just below that, and that's going to come up with a window that allows you to then modify the template for the wording. And again, this is global per task type. So this will be a change that applies globally to all clients for this task type whenever you go to send out the type of reminder for this kind of task for any clients in the system. So you can make these say whatever you want. You can also see that you can have it pull information from the program. So I'll just give you an example here. If I click on file location, then that's going to pull that from wherever that's located in the program itself as the default information you've listed on that particular field. Or you can just stay with what's defaulted in the program. If you have already set this up and then let's say you make a change in future, after you save your change, you can reset any unsent items to the new wording that you've given to your clients as well. All right, now with all that out of the way, and you've got everything set up, your deadlines are good, you've now got the program reminding you to send at least one initial notification to your clients. The next thing we look at is the task portion of the program. So remember when we said we had a task calendar and the items are going to be put there as a default item? So what happened is we're going to take a look at the calendar here first. So the first line of defense was to really sort of put the items in advance of the deadlines on your schedule. And then when you look at your calendar, you're actually seeing the month view as a default setting. And the reason for that is because we don't want you to not know in advance if you're going to be walking to the office and have way too many things assigned to you on a particular day. So you're going to be able to look at your month view and very easily discern if there's even just 2 items assigned to you, but they're both estimated to take 8 hours, which would equal a total of 16 hours of work. That would obviously be too much for one person to handle in one day. So whether you've only got 2 items that are just too long or you've got 15 items and there's just too many of them for one day, when you click the day, you can see what's going on in there. And then you can actually click and drag items from one day to another because you know that the items are not necessarily due on these days, but they are coming up soon. Now, when you change something on your schedule like this, you're not changing anything about the final deadline. You're not changing anything about the initial calendar date settings. All you're doing is changing where the item physically appears on your calendar at this point. So this could be a very good second line of defense to make sure you're not going to walk into the office and be overburdened with too much. Now, when we get back to the task list itself, which is where you're going to do all your major reporting to see, like, what do I have coming up for the next 2 weeks? Or what's due for this kind of task for the next month? Or give me everything for this client, all task types for the next 6 months of the year. So whatever you want to do, you can run those reports by using the magnifying glass, just like I mentioned earlier, and then tell it what it is you want to see by combining your reports. The default view when you get in here is to simply show you which client it's for, what it is you're doing, when is it due, who's working on it, and you can assign items to your users just by clicking the name here, and this is how most assigning is normally done. You have an overall status of generally sort of where you are with the item itself. Did you get everything? And if you fill that out, it'll record when you said you got everything and then start counting from that day how long you've been working on the file until you close the item to show it as completed. Or if you change the task status to completed, it'll close it as well. And then it'll stop counting the amount of days because it'll be done at that point. And also a spot for a file location, which just simply means it's a spot you can type anything you want in here and then just hit enter to save that information. It doesn't really have any specific meaning. You can kind of just use that for whatever you want. The default view as well is to show you everything that's due for the month for all clients, all users, all task types. Now, if you want to narrow that down, like I said, you can just go to that magnifying glass and let's say just give me everything assigned to Adam for that same date range here. So he's got 6 items. We can see that number in the top left, and this is what he's working on. One of these items is actually past due. But if we're going to be moving stuff on our calendars, what we may want to do is see where that is right beside that due date. So the columns you can adjust in here, this is done on a per user basis. But you're going to go to the top left and click the square with the blue line in it. And obviously take out whatever columns you don't really care about. So if there's some you're not using, just get rid of them. But add in that calendar date. Make sure everybody does this because it's probably fairly important that each user sees this. So that directly beside the calendar date, I see the deadline. I know how many days at all times I have left to get the work completed. Now, further to this, if I actually want to go directly to that day first, it's going to go right to that day and flash a color to let me know this is the one I clicked on. And if I then move that over to the 30th and go back to the list, you'll see that that date has already updated for me. So that's great because you'll know that without even having to hit refresh, your calendar dates are always going to be accurate with you as you move things around on your schedule. Now, another thing you can do, and you may want to discuss this as an office, but in the view height columns, there is up to 25 customizable checkboxes. Now, everybody has to add the visibility of them, but only one user has to change the names of them. So if you talk about it as an office, what you're going to want to do is discuss this. What are some things that we must say we have done no matter what kind of task we're working on that applies to everything we do? So a generalized workflow to every type of task in the system because these are global. So let's say you discuss it and you guys all agree there's a minimum of 4 things we must confirm we have said we have done before we can ever show a task as being closed or completed. And then let's say your admin goes into define there at the bottom and now changes the names to match what you've agreed with. And you can also give them colors. So as you fill out the step, the task actually changes to the color that you're selecting. So when we do this, then let's have a look at month view here. Your task list is going to look a lot more like this to represent the statuses in which you are currently at. Now what's kind of nice is not only do you get to fill out those checkboxes, but if you click beside it in the same column area after it's been filled out, it'll actually show you who did it and on what day. And further to that, in your search, using the 4th tab on the right, you can actually search by whether or not those items have been specifically filled out or not. So what's really important here is that at all times we can run a report to see where we stand with anything in the program and at a glance even see that by the colors in which they're currently located. So how it all kind of comes together is we got our auto notifications. The program has made us send out at least one type of notification to the client. And now we're running reports here and we say, give me everything that's due in the first, let's say the next couple of weeks that does not have that first checkbox filled out. And we see that there's an item that's due in, let's say, 7 days. So obviously 7 days, we've still got some time, but we don't have anything from the client. So we give them a call, we leave a message. Maybe the next day we send them into their email. We log a missing info item on their file though to say that we're missing some stuff, and we log that we left that phone call and that email to the client. We run the report again a couple of days later. We still don't have anything from the client. We open up the ticket. We log more details onto there to say that we've called them and left voicemail and email. And we keep doing that, and we keep doing that over and over and over. The deadline passes. The client never got back to us, and now there's a penalty. Suddenly the client's on the phone with you going, why is there a penalty? I believe I hired you guys to make sure that that doesn't happen. It's going to be pretty easy for you to go into your system and go, well, look, we had a ticket on your file here. We've tried to contact you on these days through email, through voicemail. We had to get a certain file from you because we could not get the work completed without it. It was very important. And so it's going to be pretty easy for you to know and prove that you did your part and then sort of shift the onus of any penalties onto the client and not your office because you've got it in your system to show that you were not just aware of the item, you also tried to do your part as best as you possibly could to get the work completed. So that's where it all really comes together is you can see that you got to put your deadlines in a business client first so that your task section will have items to report with. You're going to use your task section pretty often so that you're running reports, you're scheduling things to users, you're figuring out what you've done in terms of statuses. And also a question that comes up a lot is, okay, well, can I assign a task to more than one person? The answer is no, but as a person gets assigned to a task, they fill out their steps and then they, let's say, move it on to the next person. What you can do is there's an internal staff notification here at the top, and you can tell it to notify an employee if the task status changes or if the staff has the assigned staff has been changed to a new person. So anytime it's been given to a new person, they're going to get a pop-up that lets them know this task has now been assigned to you. And if anybody aside from them changes a step or closes a step, they'll also be aware that something has been completed on it. So you don't have to activate those if you don't want to, but it does give for good internal communication so that you don't even have to worry about setting up a communication and sending it to them. The program will just automatically notify them that you've reassigned it to that person now. Now, one last thing. You can save your own searches in here, and they're going to appear in this drop-down just above the refresh button under the search magnifying glass. If you want to save a search, what you're going to do is you're going to click the magnifying glass, and you're going to tell it what you want to see. So let's say it's everything to me, all clients for the next month, all task types, only unclosed items, and then we're just going to save this as my default, and then click Save. Now it's going to ask you, do you want the date range for the save to always be the same, or do you want the program to have it move forward with you on a monthly basis automatically or a weekly basis depending on what date range you're searching? So that's going to tell it that it's been saved, and then it's going to ask you, do you want this search available to all users or just yourself? So if you click no, it's going to be just to you. Now, if you've accidentally clicked yes and you don't want everybody else to see it, because let's say 5 users are making 5 searches, the list is going to get kind of cluttered. You can click the tiny magnifying glass beside the dropdown, go into Manage User-Specific Searches, highlight the username, and then just tell the program which searches you care to see and which ones you don't, and then also set that up for other users in the system. And on the previous screen, if there's a search you don't want anymore, you can just highlight it and hit delete. You can also set up one to be the general default search and then save that, so that instead of the program just showing you everything for the month, you could say, show me everything as a default, no matter who comes in here, for the next 2 weeks, or everything of a certain task type for the next month or 2 months or 6 months, whatever you want to set up. So then you can start just clicking your searches there from the list, and that's going to pull up whatever you're looking for. Now, I apologize for this. I forgot to mention earlier here on the More Info tab, there's a checklist. These checkboxes work the same as the ones we looked at earlier, where we looked at client services provided with the black and gray checkmark setup. The best examples we can give for you to utilize these is they don't clear out every year. So either one method is to use it for new clients as a one-time thing, or as like a sort of an ongoing thing that you're going to have to manually sort of refresh every time you do this. So example number 1 is we only use it for when we get a new client on board. We customize the list, and these are items we need from the client when we're getting them sort of situated with our services. And then what happens is we use the the black check mark to say that we need this from the client, we don't have it. And then when we get it, we switch it to gray, and we never touch it again. Or we do it as an ongoing thing. Let's say there are permission slips that allow us to access things for the clients in the government without their permission, but we got to update them every 6 months, and this is maybe just a quick way to organize that. So we customize the list, we give the names of the permissions, and then we say, okay, black means it applies to the client, it's currently out of date. When we update it, we click it to gray, it applies to the client, means it's currently up to date. When we go to renew it again, or when it's up for renewal, we can just click that checkbox 2 more times to cycle back to the black check mark and just keep renewing those over and over as you go. So those are the best 2 examples that we could really come up with. But again, you can discuss it as an office and figure out if there's anything you would prefer to use it for. And then also you'll notice there's some custom fields up here. These ones only appear in this tab. They don't show up anywhere else. So it's just another spot for details that you can use if you want to pop that into the system. But again, it will only show up in here. And then same thing with personal clients. In that same tab, all this stuff works exactly the same way, just that it's specific for personal clients instead. So that, of course, brings us then to our last section of today's sort of training, more or less, is the personal client section. Now, one thing you don't have to do for personal clients is you don't have to set anything up. So when you import your clients to the system or add one manually by clicking Add in the top right, they're immediately going to be listed as an item in the view list here on the left. So this is a list that's specifically for your personal clients. It's the main thing you're going to be doing in here. However, the rest of the tabs that you're seeing at the top, these are not to schedule deadlines. These are just simply to say that when we do taxes for the clients, this is what we need from them every year. So the top checkbox will stay filled out from year to year, but the bottom checkbox and the date will begin the season blank so that as you fill it out, it does record that date as you go. So you're going to be able to just fill out all of these if you need to use them. And then if you want to combine these into a nice, easy to read report, in the reports menu at the top, there is a personal tax client report option. And then the second option on the left says client documentation required. So that'll group those tabs into what looks like a PDF report here. And then if you have print to PDF on your computer, you can certainly go ahead and then click print and send that to PDF. Now you'll notice I don't have it on mine because I haven't actually added that to Windows. That's actually not part of the client track software. It's actually part of your Windows operating system. If you also don't have that, you can just go to Google and run a quick search for print to PDF add-on Windows free. It'll be a quick install that'll give you that ability to have a virtual printer so that you can then have the option to print to a PDF file so you can save that as a PDF and then obviously attach that to an email and give it to your client. Now from the main screen, you don't have to worry about changing these things from here. In fact, the only thing that you wouldn't be able to do from the view list is just the checkboxes here, the services provided. And again, first click black, second gray, third clears, and again, you can customize them, but it won't affect the tab names at the top, just strictly those checkboxes. Everything else, the return status, the income tax info, will all appear as part of your view list. So you don't have to worry about changing that stuff from here. So when you get into the view list, you're going to be using this to record or what you're doing for your clients throughout tax season. The first thing you're going to want to do is have your admin take a look at the checkboxes that are in here and figure out, do they or do they not match the way in which you do a tax return for your office? So likely our default steps don't necessarily match the way you do things, but you can, of course, completely customize these any which way you choose so that it matches your preferred set of steps here. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the top and click on Define Process Steps. It looks like a pair of shoe prints. When you do this change, this is global not just for all clients, but for all users as well. So this is the very definition of global. From here, you can swap the order of them, you can delete them, you can rename them, you can add more of them, do what you got to do so that it matches the exact way in which you run the tax returns in your office. Now, when you click OK, that's going to refresh your list so you can see the new steps that have been added. You'll also notice there's a color here that gets darker as you go. And again, if you click beside the checkbox in the same column area after it's been filled out, you'll get the who and when actually did that. One thing you may notice is that the default color for the status is actually a very vibrant green. And if you're like me, you may want to modify that. And you certainly can. You're going to notice there's a little bubble in the very top right-hand corner. If you click that guy, and then there's a tab in here called Grid Options. And then you can finally select the color that you want. Now, if you notice the gradient is not getting darker as you go, under the, or just above the color here, there's an option to make sure that you can display the color firstly. And then the lower one says change the gradient so that it gets darker as you fill things out. So if you don't see that happening, you can change that from there. And then now, as you can see, when you start filling out the steps, the color will adjust as you go. So what happens here is you're going to see a listing of every personal client you've added to the system to track their return status. Every client begins on the awaiting client status because they have not yet come to see you. What's going to happen is usually when a client first comes in, you're going to switch their status. Now, if they gave you everything, you'll probably just want to put them right to in progress. But if they're missing something, then you'll probably want to put them to on hold missing info and then open up a missing info ticket, tell it which client it's for, and then assign somebody to take care of that for you, or yourself in case you just want the program to remind you. Once you get everything from them, you can list that you've received everything, and once again, it records the date. Then you've got your in-house due date. They'll always be April 30th by default, but you can click that and say, this is when we promised the return to be finished by. So whatever date you want to do that. Your days in progress will count how long you've been working on the files there since the day you said you got everything, and we'll keep counting until you change the client status over to completed, and you'll get a completed date that gets recorded in the completed column as well. You can also assign your users to whoever's going to take care of the client from here, and then the users can use the magnifying glass to pull a report of what they want to see, and also they can save their search. So they can just save a report of just the clients for their own name if they want and pull that up really quickly. Now you'll also notice at the bottom of days in progress, there is an average counter in there. And if you look at that at the end of your season, that's going to tell you sort of how things went in general. So if your average is anywhere from 5 to 15 days, you probably had a pretty good season and everything went more or less according to plan. But let's say your average got bumped up to 25 days. So anytime you're in a list view, you can sort by the column by clicking the header. The first will be ascending order. The second will be descending order. And that's available in all lists, even the task list. Now, let's say we do a descending order, and we see that the first 50 clients in our system here took a lot longer than everybody else. Everybody else seems to have taken, let's say, 5 to 8 days or so. So those clients are maybe my troublesome, difficult clients. So I pop the report into Excel. I delete all the names below those 50, and I save the report for next year as troublesome clients. So then what I can do is, at the start of next season, I can contact those clients maybe earlier than everybody else to try to get them in and done and out of the way before the bulk of my return starts coming through the door. And then hopefully that will then allow us to get that average back down to a proper number so we can see how we're actually doing. It's also possible that your average got bumped up to, let's say, 40 days. And maybe one of your competitors has closed their doors this year, and you got 500 new clients walking your doors with not nearly enough staff to keep up with the workload. So now your average is just taking longer because there's just too much work sitting there. So that's going to tell you maybe you want to hire some temp staff for next tax season to reduce the workload and make sure that everybody can get things done on time. So whatever that number is, hopefully it's providing you with some insight as to how things are going. And of course, if you run a search for just you as a user for the clients you're assigned to, you'll get an average for just yourself as well. Now, one question I do get kind of often is, I got a couple of new clients this year. They haven't done previous years, let's say 1 or 2 years worth of outstanding returns. So I know when I add them to the system, they're going to be as part of this list. And you'll notice personal clients will actually always be listed as 1 year prior because that's the tax season you're actually working on. But how do I take care of the years that are outstanding from prior to 2017 that I can't show in this list here? The best method that we've found is to open up your communications and create a communication type called previous tax year. So then add the client to the system and do their most recent return as part of the rest of the returns in the view list. But then for each other outstanding year, add a communication and call it previous tax year, and then use the subject to show the year it pertains to, say which client it's for, and then say who's going to be working on it. Now this person can just list what they've done right here. So here is what I've done so far. Now, I know they don't get the check boxes, and it's not quite as elaborate as the list view for the most recent year, but it is a much faster way to do this because when I save this to the system, now if I want to pull up a report of any of those items, then I'm going to look at the communications, and I'm going to tell the program, okay, give me of the type, all outstanding previous years, currently unresolved, no date range, thing I'm working on currently. Now, if I want to see just the 2018s or just the 2016s or 2015s, I don't know why I said 2018, but I'm going to go to the communication name, and I'm going to type in the year I want to see. So let's go for 2016. So I'm going to narrow it down to just those ones. So this is a very quick, most efficient way to add these by them, to track by them, and then when they're done, you just resolve them to get rid of them, and that's it. There is, of course, another way of doing it. It is much more complex and will take you a lot more time to do it if you want to do it in list view. If curious to know about that method and you just don't find this as working for you, even though it does seem to work really well for a lot of offices, but again, it may not for you. And if that's the case, just send an email to us, support@clienttrack.ca, and just say, hey, we'd like to know the alternative method to tracking prior tax returns for the clients that are aside from the most recent year. And we'll, of course, give you the instructions for that as well. All right, now, in terms of reviewing this information anytime you want, because I know it's a lot to take in, and it is basically a full training that we're doing with everything right now. What you can do is you can review this detail by going to our website. So let's just head over to clienttrack.ca. And then once you get there, you're going to want to click on the support page. So we're just about to get there. All right, so we click on the support page. And then you want to scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see a big green button. When you mouse over it, it turns blue. It's called View In-Depth Demos. And when you click that, you're then going to see videos parts 1 and 2. These are a recording of everything that we talked about today. So you'll be able to review this information as much as you like and remind yourself on this information. If there's something specific you're looking for, then also on the support page of our website, you're going to find there's a thing called Support Center. And when you click that, you'll get a new tab in your browser that opens up with a variety of different modules here that you can go into. So let's say you want to remind yourself about the More Info tab. So either section 4 or 5, business or personal, will have a guide in there that will remind you how to do that. And that guide is section 412, More Info tab. And then you're going to see a variety of pictures and words that will describe to you exactly how to utilize this. And also at the bottom of almost every one of these, you'll also notice that there should be a video that reiterates exactly what this guide is trying to explain to you. So this information is available to you at all times, whether you're a client with ClientTrack or just testing out the program. And speaking of that, testing out the program, it is the full working program. So when you do get it from our website, you can install it on all your computers, put in all your users, set up your real data, put everything in there. It's just that it works for a 30-day time period. If that runs out, your data is not going to be deleted. It will still be there. So if you want to move forward at that point, then just give our sales staff a call. Let them know that you want to move forward. They'll talk about what version you want and the amount of licenses you're going to need, and then they'll talk about pricing afterwards with you. And then once you get a little quick purchase through, they'll give you a key. You pop that key in from any one of your computers, and that will register all of your systems, because that actually, in fact, registers your data file, which then tells the program it's good to go. So I'd like to thank you guys very much for joining the session. I hope that you found it very informative and that it does shed a lot of very good detailed light on the program itself. And once again, we do understand that it is a lot of information to take in, so don't be afraid to contact us in future and maybe book a support session where you want to ask a few questions, or if you've got the email address, like we said earlier, support@clienttrack.ca, you can also ask your questions in there. When you are emailing, try your best to detail as much as you can. Like, let us know where you are in the program, what you're clicking on, the exact steps you're doing. Also, try to let us know the version of the program, just in case maybe we need to give you an update. You'll find the version under support at About ClientTrack here, and you'll see that that tells you what we're doing. This is actually the most recent version that we're currently working with on the website at the time of the recording. Okay. Well, we'd like to once again thank you for joining the session. We hope you have yourselves a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch with you very soon. So for now, the session is going to end. We hope you have yourselves a great day.